Many people are familiar with the legend of flying tigers, the time when tigers, led by General Chennault against the Japanese invaders, they were weak against the strong, fewer force defeated larger ones, who had hit great exploits. When people recall the memory, praise the flying tiger pilots, there is such a group of people that are likely to be forgotten. Some filled the aircraft's ammunition, some patched the bullet holes, and some supplied oxygen for the pilots. They provided weather information, and etc. They are a group of unsung heroes. In August 2013, those over 90-year-old Flying Tiger veterans from the 69th Depot Repair Squadron, who served in China, held their 37th reunion in Pennsylvania. The youngest among them reaches 91 years old. It will probably be their last meeting. The one who initiates this gathering is 91-year-old Marty Oxenberg. He arrived in China participating in the war in 1945. He served in the Flying Tiger's 69th Squadron. Originally, Oxenberg planned to have a small gathering and reminisce with his old comrades Lon and Musser. However, more and more people want to join in. This 3 people chatting becomes a 75 people reunion today.
When there was a reason to celebrate, he was there. And when there was, the world looked very sad and dark.
Charlene is the chairman of the Flying Tigers 69th DRS Association. Her father, Stu Fontaine, was a Flying Tigers mechanic. He died 2 years ago.
Driving across the Burma Road as part of the 69th. And I think he learned a great deal about people of other races and other cultures through the experience.
I miss him daily, and I'm proud to be his daughter.
Although Dad never talked about the war, I'm taking it upon myself as a responsibility to tell his stories.
This is the first time in 70 years that my father was first publicly recognized for his service to the country.
That who I am today is very much a part of what he gave me and the experience that he had in China.
This gathering shortly lasts 2 days. Tiger veterans took us traveling through time back to the Dien Burma India battlefield during World War II. Flying Tigers, formerly known as the Chinese Air Force American Volunteer Group, was invited by the Kuomintang government during World War II and was founded by Chennault in August 1941 against the Japanese in China-Burma area. Flying Tigers has been world famous for its winged tiger logo and painted shark head fighters. On March 1943, the U.S. 14th Air Force was established. It inherited the assignments of the Flying Tigers, still being commanded by Chennault, flying over the hump route and supporting China war battlefield. As the war ended, the Flying Tigers shot down 2,600 enemy aircrafts, sunk or mauled 2.23 million tons of enemy merchant ships, 44 warships, and 66,700 Japanese soldiers were shot to death. August 10, 2013, under the blessing of the Flying Tigers family, Lon spent his 102-year-old's birthday. Although 100 longevity he is, but remains hale and hearty. During World War II, Lon was conscripted as Flying Tigers aircraft maintenance engineer. He was 32 years old at that time.
I enjoyed my work there, and it was interesting to see different cultures. When we were there, it was a disaster. Very humble people, and they didn't have anything to look forward to. No future, really. They do the same thing today, and 10 years later, they're still doing the same thing.
Another veteran, Musser, spent 8 hours driving back and forth by his daughter and son-in-law, who made a special trip to attend this reunion. 88-year-old Musser is not a member of the 69th Squadron, but served in Flying Tigers as well, supplying oxygen for the aircraft. Musser was 18 the year he arrived in China. For years in the past, because of the hardships suffered during the war, he was unwilling to talk about that period of the war years.
In Shanghai it was, but all the other cities, it just wasn't sanitary enough for me. I just didn't have no urge to go back.
Did he like to tell you the stories back then when he was in the service?
Oh,
Well, he used to say to me, he said, "Don't ever touch me when I'm sleeping."
Unlike Musser, his old friend Oxenberg talked endlessly about the war of that time. World War II broke out in 1943. Oxenberg's childhood playmate Schneider was recruited into the army.
And then they went to Sicily, the foot of Italy, the boot, very bottom of Italy, and he got killed on the beach.
I'm very sorry to hear that.
Well, anyway, he was 19, and so I found out, I became aware that he got killed.
Schneider's death made Oxenberg suffer from this grief. He then enlisted and became an ammunition technician. This decision gained full support from his wife, Shirley.
When we come home, I'm going to enlist. And she didn't even blink an eye because she knew how bad I felt. She said, "Whatever you do, I'll support you."
By early 1945, 23-year-old Oxenberg took warship sailing from Melbourne, Australia through the Indian Ocean. He arrived in Mumbai, India, and reached to Calcutta by train. Oxenberg and his companions were ordered to learn to drive cargo trucks within 36 hours. The next task was going through the Burma Road and crossing the Himalayas, delivering the aircraft fuel and logistical supplies to Cunning. April 21, 1945, 150 cargo trucks were divided into 3 teams starting from Calcutta, India. Most of the trucks had only one driver and one passenger. The truck that Oxenberg drove was the 8th vehicle of the team.
We were the truck drivers. 24 hours, a day and a half, we had to learn how to drive.
Did it sound like Mission Impossible?
Yeah, it was, well, you know what? No. When you're young, as we were, it's okay, we'll learn how to drive. We spent that time learning how to drive this as 5 shifts, gear shifts, forward, and 3 shifts to go back. So that's like 7-9 shifts you have to learn. Going through mountains and all kinds of, and most of us had high octane gasoline on the back because they were running short. It was a problem getting gasoline from India into China. The Burma Road, usually in the mountains, the widest was 30 feet wide. Our trucks were something like 18 feet wide. And we were in places where the mountains were 10 to 12,000 feet high, and only this, and looking down, is like maybe 4,000 or 5,000 feet. We would wake up sometimes in the morning to get ready to start driving, and we would be driving above the clouds.
Driving on the road, the danger that the team faced was not only from the Japanese jets flying from time to time, but also beware of the brigands haunting at night. The team placed to camp every evening, 5 soldiers on the guard rotation every night, Although going through hardships and dangers of 23 days driving on Burma Road, yet they also enjoyed life through the hard.
So there's three of us that were very close. One was in back of me and the other guy was in back of him. So they said to me, I was about the 8th truck from the front. They said, look, next time we get to a bridge, a wooden bridge, why don't you, see, they were driving English left-hand side in Burma and also in India. So when you get to the bridge, why don't you go on the right side and I'll go on the left side and he'll go on the right side and we'll go, that should be, break up the border. I said, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. So we come to this bridge. I'm going in this side of the road and the people see me coming down. They start running in all directions. I wasn't going to hurt anybody. But this oxen was walking this way and it was only this much space. So my right fender hit the back of the oxen and he went right over the bridge.
After World War II, Oxenberg returned to the U.S. in 1946. He said he gobbled steak as his first meal back to the States. However, because of only eating hardtack for the long time in the past year, which caused intestines and stomach discomfort, he was seriously ill. It was certainly not the American food that made Oxenberg concerned most, but his wife Shirley and his daughter that had never met, who was born during the World War II. Recalled the moment that Oxenberg arrived at the doorstep, his wife Shirley still could not conceal her excitement. This year is the 70th wedding anniversary of Oxenberg and Shirley. At the time when Oxenberg was interviewed, Shirley was anxiously looking for him outside because he forgot to tell his wife where he went. After she found Oxenberg, Shirley said that she will punish this old man. When Shirley faced to her camera lens for the interview, her deep affection to her husband was far beyond her words.
In fact, the whole time that he was in the service, I wrote him a letter every single day. There wasn't a day that went by that I didn't write a letter and mail it.
April 27, 1946, Oxenberg came back home after a lapse of 67 years. When Shirley recollected that moment, she still cannot conceal her excitement.
My mother was washing the windows in the living room, and I had a doctor's appointment, so Judy was creeping around on the floor, and as I'm walking down the steps, my mother grabbed her heart and she pointed out the window, and she went, "Oh, oh." I ran down the steps thinking my mother was having a heart attack, and when she pointed out the window, he was standing there. He had just gotten out of a taxi cab that he had gotten off, and he didn't call us and let us know he was coming home. Well, I don't think my feet hit the front steps. I ran down the steps so fast, and as we got into the house, he was going to grab Judy. He sat down on the floor, and I pointed to the picture and I said, "Daddy?" And then I pointed to him and I said, "Daddy?" And I pointed to her and I said, "Your daddy."
There is a special guest who participates in this gathering. His name is Cliff Long. He was a pilot of the Flying Tigers and one of the youngest U.S. Air Force pilots. He was only 19 years old when he came to China for the war. In his own words, he was young and frivolous at that time. Recalling the days during the war, Cliff Long said the most thanks must be sent to these ground staffs, who stayed up all night helping him to maintain the aircraft when he took rest after the mission accomplished.
Now, I must be honest with you. At 19 years of age, I was too young and naive to realize what was going on. I know now all the things that you fellas did to keep us flying and to bring us back. And there was a great amount of relationship there, an understanding between you guys and the pilots. Because when we would come back from a mission, who was at the end of the runway waiting? You guys.
Cliff Long mentioned that this will be his last public speech. He wants to ensure that the maintenance squadron members could hear this gratitude from his heart. Cliff Long served in China for 9 months. This entire 3-page order list records his hundreds of tasks in China, including the famous Salween River campaign.
You know, I look back in my older years and I think of China, and the one campaign in China, offensive campaign that was successful, was the Salween River campaign. And that campaign was successful because that campaign was to chase the Japanese down out of China to reopen the Burma Road so that supplies could come in from India. And we did that. And I was one of the 4 senior pilots in the squadron. We were asked to fly a ceremonial formation over the reopening ceremony with all the Chinese generals there and General Chennault. War was so near to them at that point that while we were doing this, the Japanese on a hill nearby was firing mortar shells into the ceremony. And so they called us on the radio and they said, could you hit that Japanese gun so that they stopped those mortars? So we peeled off and went there and fired our guns, and we stopped the enemy fire.
In addition to shark teeth, generally Flying Tigers fighters are painted with the name of the person's pilots most revered or most concerned about. On Cliff Long's fighter, his wife's name was written, surely accompany with him peacefully, going through each and every time in battle. In the enjoyment of successive victory, Cliff Long said that his inner fear will never vanish all this time. This bloodshed was the fabric badge which was granted to each American pilot by the China Aviation Committee. It reads, "This foreign person has come to China to help in the war effort. Soldiers and civilians, one and all, should rescue and protect him. When the plane forced landing or was shot down, the bloodshed can help American pilots receiving Chinese people's assistance." Cliff Long carried the bloodshed in his flying jacket's pockets.
They say to me, "You must have had a blast." And I say to them, with all honesty, no, I didn't. But I prayed a lot. And I prayed each time I would go out on a mission loaded with bombs. And I would pray knowing that if I got shot down over Japanese territory, they executed the fighter pilots. I had friends that were with me and they got shot down and they were executed. They didn't live. So that's constantly on your mind, and that fear. So it wasn't something that was a lot of fun. It was, I took great pride in doing the job well. The targets that I was told to hit, I took great pride in doing the job that needed to be done. And in later years now, I think, and I have sadness for all the lives I've taken over those years. Because you know, firing 50 caliber machine guns on your wings, dropping bombs on targets where you know the enemy is. I must have killed a lot of God's children. So that is not pleasant.
Though being super powerful on the battlefield, when he returned to the U.S. after World War II, Cliff Long's fate seemed to fall from heaven. Owing to not finished high school study, Cliff Long had returned to the high school class.
It was very humiliating. Very humiliating. Well, you're trained as an officer and a gentleman and above everyone else, and then you end up in school with kids. It was very hard. And for a time, I tried to, while I was trying to get my diploma, I tried to get various jobs. I even went to a canning factory where they can corn. I couldn't get a job there. Can you imagine that? How humiliating that was for me as a proud officer with all kinds of awards, and no one recognized it.
Cliff Long's comrade Bruning had died. His daughter Karen came to attend the party. Father's experience deeply influenced Karen. Karen certified of being a pilot when she grew up, and she had the opportunity to let her father take her flying aircraft.
The time that he spent there was a time that he felt great value to someone. My bedtime stories at night as a little girl were those of him flying in China.
Since 1968, the Flying Tigers 69th Maintenance Squadron began their first reunion after the war. And by 2008, due to their advanced age, this reunion activity was undertook by their children. At that time, a small tiger appeared on the Flying Tigers logo. While the number of surviving Flying Tigers is dwindling, but Flying Tiger's story has been telling from generation to generation.
Because you're the tigers, we're the cubs. So that's how it came about. And so now we have cubs and grand cubs and great grand cubs. And for generations, it will go on that way. I have 30 tiger dads. I have to be the luckiest girl in the world. Because every single tiger, as I wrote in the memorial service this morning, every single tiger, when their buddies, daughters or sons, when they pass the black border, the father or the mother, the other tiger moms and dads surround us, and whatever we need, they help us with. And so it's quite warming to have so many dads.
There is a Chinese face in this gathering. In fact, he has become a regular of the Flying Tigers reunion. Professor of History at York University, Professor Cho Sahao's father, Cho Shie, who served as the director of Hostel in the War Area Services Corps, which belongs to the Moral Endeavor Society, is specifically responsible for the reception of the Flying Tigers. Because of his father's relationship, Cho Sahao and the Flying Tigers veterans became close friends. In his mind, the Flying Tigers is the best friendship ambassador in the U.S. Sino history.
Flying Tigers, we should take them seriously. Flying Tigers came to China. I'm a scholar. In considerable academic point of view, on one hand, they were pinning down the Japanese army in China. They were also helping Chinese. While they themselves have their own strategic benefits, we must clarify this. But after they came, they really had done a lot of good things. This is the best symbol of friendship between China and the U.S. They quickly passed away, but we must make the history preserved.
2 days of meeting passed swiftly. Tiger veterans were distressed at parting, wondering when will be the next time of meeting, which may be their last reunion. General Chennault died in 1958. The U.S. Department of Defense buried him with the most solemn military salute in the Arlington National Cemetery in Washington. His tombstone was written in Chinese, General Chennault's tomb, which is the only Chinese text in the Arlington Cemetery. Not every Flying Tigers members can have such a high standard funeral, yet perhaps every Tiger members deserve respect and recognition of future generations. In 320 members of the Flying Tigers 69th Squadron, 94 people are unable to be contacted. 124 people had died. Here we pay tribute to those past Flying Tigers, and to those alive, we wish them a happy and healthy life in their old age.
谢谢您收看本期的时事特区，再会。